Hello and good evening. My name is Max Mikosi and I'm the manager of Sage Metro Portland. Welcome to the Sage Metro Portland's virtual 20th anniversary celebration. We are thrilled you have joined us for this special occasion of celebrating the work of Sage, Elder Resource Alliance, Gay and Gray, and Friendly House, and all the volunteers and staff that have supported this program over the last 20 years. Thanks to advocates from the LGBT plus older adult community. And just want to acknowledge that Elder Resource Alliance was founded in 2001. In this next hour, we will be celebrating and sharing an archive collection of the history, herstory, theirstory of this program of Friendly House that includes testimonial videos of participants and advocates, flyers, photos, and more of many very resilient, committed, and supportive people who have helped lift this program and many people we serve. We hope you understand the efforts this has taken us here at Sage and Friendly House in locating, transferring, editing, and more of this very special archive project. If you've noticed that we have missed anyone in this presentation of volunteers and key players, please do not hesitate to let us know. We know we may be missing people and we need you to let us know who we are missing. And if we're really lucky, a contact of that person. Please join us, sit back, reminisce, and let's celebrate our elders who have and continue to pave the way. Thursday. Mary Beth, thank you so very much for being willing to make time, inviting Brother Paul and me into your home to be able to collect your story as it relates to your involvement with Elder Resource Alliance, Sage, Gay and Gray.
Thank you so much. I'd like to give a little backstory of before I came to Portland. I was in the closet for 36 years in Texas. Came to Portland in 1996, and my partner and I at the end were 49 years together. And for the first time in my life in 1996, I had access to a gay newspaper called Just Out. One of our friends had to move to high-rise assisted living in Beaverton in one little room. That was our first experience of visiting that type of facility, and she and I both said we don't want that to be our choice. So we began the journey of developing a LGBT retirement facility in early 2000s. I put an article in the Just Out newspaper requesting people to join our quest, which would be known as SHARE. A little of life's irony. At the same time that I put that into the Just Out newspaper, Paul Arabino had an article saying a GLBT senior group was starting at Friendly House. The only one specifically for GLBT seniors was going to be at Friendly House in Portland, Oregon. He called me and asked if I would join. I didn't even know where Friendly House was, and I didn't know who Paul Arabino was. What a wonderful journey that became. First, we were called ERA, Elder Resource Alliance, then Gay and Gray, and lastly, Sage. Here we are today celebrating our 20th anniversary. What an honor to be part of Sage. During that time, I was part of many panels on raising awareness of GLBT seniors and their needs in PDX, separate from heterosexual needs. Wendy Woods and I went to San Francisco for a presentation, letting them know that there was a group in Portland, Oregon for GLBT seniors. PGMC, Portland Men's Gay Chorus, had been given $35,000 for the first time to present a senior LGBT music and short story show featuring 7 seniors. Evelyn and I were privileged to be one of the 7, and Darcel was privileged to be one of the 7. Also, there was a national, Brother Paul, I need you to help me with this one.
Yeah, that was the conference out of Boston, Creating Change.
Yes, Creating Change yearly goes around to a different city making presentations about LGBT seniors. So at that time we were ERA. We hosted the Senior Lounge, and Friendly House, ERA, gave a panel presentation at that time. 20 years later, here we are. While most of the original group has retired or passed away, Paul and I have remained friends.
Thank you, Mary Beth. It's beautiful. So Just Out has served a very important service to us. I would have never have met Mary Beth otherwise. And also Just Out did a great job sort of reporting our early activities. So I really want to acknowledge Just Out, and especially Marty Davis for providing that support and leadership. So thank you, Mary Beth. I'd also like to chime in and say that the way I kind of got involved is that I worked in the field of aging for many years, and I went to a national aging conference, and I was just blown away that this, now again, 20 years ago, this was not talked about, and there was a group from Boston that was doing some outreach and education, and I was just like, oh my goodness, like, we've got to bring this to Portland. I think they're called the Boston Aging Project. And so I was so interested, and I also had heard that Friendly House, as part of their senior program, was trying to develop some additional, what the county calls focal point outreach, and they had some concerns about LGBTQ older adults that were maybe not getting services through their traditional case management system and information referral system. So I invited folks from Friendly House. I also know that there was some staff that were very interested in this, and also some elders. Robert Smith, who is part of some earlier efforts that the county had tried to do but never quite got off the ground. And fortunately, I found my sister, Mary Beth Brindley, through Just Out. So we were a small group, and most people don't remember this, but before we were even called ERA, the Elder Resource Alliance, we were called the GLBT Elder Outreach Committee. Yeah, because we just had to name it something so I could go on county time. And we had several people from the county that came in at one time or another. We did a lot of work with the adult care home program, for example, where there was just so much outright discrimination and hostility towards people like us that the county really stepped up their efforts. And we were sort of like a loose committee. We didn't really have a home. And Friendly House very graciously, after we were called Elder Resource Alliance, discussed it with their board, discussed it with us, and we came under the Friendly House umbrella as the Elder Resource Alliance. But 20 years ago, there was so much difference that we just, it's hard to verbalize like how it was different then. And one of the things I remember, Mary Beth mentioned Vintage Voices. At that point in time, we're like, oh, well, maybe we should go. And we had someone who donated some money so we could keep the tickets affordable at Angel. And we had 2 people from the I think it was like the Queer Student Union or something at Reed College. At Reed College, because it was going to be at Call Auditorium. And so I invited David Ham and Cody Bambino.
Yes.
They came, and they were very young and very nice, and they're like, absolutely, we can provide, because it was like up a hill, and we can provide like escorts to help seniors, and then, yeah. So I remember that they were like, absolutely, we'll kick in $500, we'll pay for, and Mary Beth was like Brother Paul was like, we couldn't exist on campus. We'd be expelled. Like, we couldn't have a queer union. Like, it would be disallowed. We'd get in trouble. We'd break all these laws in the Bible Belt. Like, so it was just so interesting, and also so supportive from an intergenerational lens. Like, here are these students who are like, oh my God, tell us more. How can we meet your needs? It was like, my goodness. So those are the early days, and I'm so grateful that through the years, with the leadership from Friendly House and folks like Max McCosey coming on board, that this has been able to continue in ways beyond we would have ever imagined 20 years ago. So, Mary Beth,
Yes, Brother Paul.
you mentioned Share, and that you were starting a group around housing. That was your thing, and that had some great results. However, I seem to remember I got a call from you one day, and it wasn't always called Share. Can you tell folks what you were originally going to be called? Because I don't want to make this up. I want to hear it from you. Tell me about that meeting that I wasn't at. Go ahead.
We really were struggling as to what to call ourselves, and nobody came up with anything much. So I went home and I started doing acronyms, and I came up with HOE, Housing of Elders. I didn't even have the gay word in there. And so I was talking to you about my choice, and you said...
Oh, well, all I remember was housing. You said, Brother Paul, we're going to be called Housing Our Elders. And I was like, okay, how? And I said, oh, I don't. And she said, yes, Brother Paul, we're going to be called the Hoes, Housing Our And I was like, And you, and I remember saying, Mary Beth, do you know what a hoe is? And you said to me, Brother Paul, it's a farming implement. That's what I remember, like it was yesterday. And I was like, yes, it's a farming implement, and it's also something that's not really nice to say. And I remember that I told you my understanding of what the other definition of hoe is, and you sort of like said, oh, I better tell the committee we don't want to print up letterhead with hoe on it. So that's how it started, and then they came up with Share, and I remember Mary Beth called me, and she goes, we're going to be called Share. Are we going to get in any trouble? I said, no, I don't think so. It sounds great. So Share, Senior Housing and Elder Enterprise or something? Retirement Enterprises. So anyway, that's how Share came to be.
Yes, Betty Nelson came up with that wonderful title.
There we go, yes. And Vintage Voices you were part of. That was a tremendous, tremendous program. And I think it was kind of like light years ahead of its time in terms of visibility for older LGBTQ folks. Do you have any memories of that in terms of the production or interviews?
My key word was I was astonished that we would even be doing something like this for LGBT seniors, let alone short stories with music that went with them, which of course the choir sang.
So you mentioned Evelyn, and I think it's important for people to understand the role that Evelyn played. So my memory is that Evelyn was not as out, if you will, as you were.
Well, number one, Evelyn was always working. She did not go to the Share board meetings, but she would go to things that Share did. So she calls me and she says, I have a choice to do something for this ballot measure, but I want you to do it. I said, honey bun, I am in Corpus Christi, Texas on a mission. I cannot fly into Portland and do this little commercial thing. For the sake of LGBT seniors, you have got to put yourself out there and go do this. And she did.
Mary Beth and I have been together for 45 years. Several years ago, Mary Beth needed open heart surgery. I was there, of course, supporting and worrying about her as any partner would. But when the doctor came out to say the operation was over, I was not allowed in to see Mary Beth. After all those years, I still didn't have the legal right to see her. And I cannot possibly tell you the hurt that I felt. Please vote no on 36.
I use that video a lot when I do my trainings, and I cry a little bit every time because I know that she was working. I don't believe she was out at the time where she worked, and that was on mainstream media. Like, I don't think, because she was a denturist, right? Was she out where she worked?
Well, no. But if somebody had asked her if she was lesbian, she probably would have said yes. Yeah. It didn't matter your lifestyle when you made teeth.
Fair enough.
I'd like
She
some
made
rainbow
beaut-
teeth. I'd
She
like
made
some rainbow
beautiful
teeth, please.
But the
Yeah.
teeth never had to ask her if she
Right.
was gay.
Yeah.
Hi, this is Dan Torrance. I'm recording some history for SHARE, Senior Housing and Retirement Enterprises. I was working in long-term care, and I saw an ad for volunteers to join together to help pull together housing options for the queer community. It was in Just Out in 2002. Mary Beth Brindley and Evelyn Hall had put the notice in Just Out, and I responded. I called, and it turned out that Evelyn and Mary Beth lived very close to me in North Portland, and right around the corner from them lived Tom Peters. And Tom Peters was one of the original board members. I went to the meeting, and they had been in operations for maybe a year. They had explored some options, but they hadn't received their 501c3 yet. So I helped get the 501c3 application processed, and we received our letter of determination. Prior to that, they were operating under the umbrella of ERA, Elder Resource Alliance. And I think I was board president for maybe 5 years. Wendy Woods was very influential in the survey that she wrote for SHARE, and we spent one summer getting that out to the community early on, I want to say 2003, and we passed it out at Pride, and I think we probably got maybe 1,000 surveys back. And what the survey communicated to us as a board was that the queer community in Portland wanted bricks and mortar. They wanted a campus setting close into medical services and shopping and cultural events, and they wanted gardens and all kinds of things. It was really pie in the sky, but that set us on the direction of trying to fundraise and come up with the resources to find housing options for the community. In 2008, we decided to start moving the board meeting around to different housing options so the group could learn what was out there. And Debbie Davis worked for Elder Place, so we were able to use their board meeting room after hours. And we were having big discussions about modifying the mission statement because what we were finding with the more outreach that we were doing and education to the greater community, we were seeing that we could be more effective with ending discrimination with existing providers. And it would be a lot less expensive than building bricks and mortar. Plus, we felt that the greater Portland gay community was really quite diversified and spread out. Keep in mind that the survey and the voices, the most vocal, the loudest voices coming from the community about housing and services were the young old. And they were the ones that had options. But the whole time we were doing this, I was always keenly aware of the fact that there were the old and the oldest old that were already in the system, already living in assisted living or adult care homes that were, they were back in the closet. They were fearful of discrimination. Those were the individuals that I was concerned about. How do we reach out to these existing providers and enlighten them? Early on, there was a horrible experience with, it was Wendy and Mary Beth. They went out to East County, Gresham. They were invited by Multnomah County Adult Care Home Program to present to the adult care home operators. And the adult care home operators were to receive CEUs, continuing education credits, for being educated on the needs of the queer community. Half the group got up and walked out. The other half that stayed were openly hostile, and it was a very unpleasant experience. And it was at that point that Multnomah County Adult Care Home Program realized that they had a lot of work to do, and we realized we had a lot of work to do also. So, realizing that we wanted to break down barriers with existing providers, we're sitting at Providence Elder Place brainstorming on fundraising ideas, and Debbie Davis, God bless her heart, she's brilliant, and she came up with the idea of having a resource fair. And when she said it, it was like this light bulb went off in my head. It was like, oh my gosh, that's it. We need to reach out to all these providers and have them come to a senior resource fair where we can invite the gay community to come in and see what's available out there. And so then the providers get to see that there's an existing market. They work towards ending discrimination in their existing facilities. Mind you, it was never the employees, it was always the existing residents that were the problem. And then also we could reach out to other providers, home health services, in-home care services, elder law attorneys, all kinds of things. And we decided to have we asked the Queer Center if we could have the first Gay and Gray there. And it was on May 16th, 2009. And we had an educational track, and we had the vendor fair. And it was a Saturday, and it was quite successful. It was a big deal that we did this, and we pulled it off, and we pulled it off really well. And we knew we had a winning recipe here for reaching out to the community and of providers and helping them see the light and helping them realize that we were out here and that we needed these services too. It was interesting though, when we did that, it definitely morphed the organization into realizing that our mission really had evolved to outreach and education and trying to end discrimination. And we were starting to dovetail closely to what ERA was doing with Friendly House. And so we felt that perhaps maybe the time had come that we needed to propose a merger with ERA. We felt that we had really done great work going out with a bang with Gay and Gray, and I know that Debbie and I are very proud of the fact that resource fair continued on for quite some time and probably has some more life in it in the future. We were delighted that there was a movement towards joining SAGE as a national organization, and we felt like we had really done great work over the years, and I was very proud of everyone and their participation. It's been a good run. I'm really happy with what has come from all the work that went into SHARE and Gay and Gray, and that energy that was carried into Elder Resource Alliance that morphed into SAGE. And under Max's leadership, it's just more than I could have possibly imagined at this point. The fact that we're going to have housing coming online in the near future is very, very exciting.
So here we are, celebrating the
Here we
20th
are.
anniversary of Sage Metro Portland, formerly Gay and Gray, formerly Elder Resource Alliance. And thank you guys for taking time to chat with me. And maybe could you introduce yourselves and who you are and why you care about Sage and Elder Resource Alliance?
Oh, did someone tell you we cared?
I had that impression over
Just a
the
little
last
bit.
25 years
just-
of blood, or
just
20
much.
years of blood, sweat, and tears.
Yes, we're excited. We're excited because, you know, it's the beginning of the program is also kind of aligns with the beginning of us.
Yeah. And this is Vaughan Albanese, by the way. I'm Eileen McClary.
Oh, very good. They must have taught you that in school. Introduce yourself.
Maya asked us to.
Oh, sorry.
Well, so tell me how did you guys become involved in this project? Go way back.
Well, I was the senior program director at Friendly House when we started all this. So that's how I got to be a part of it. And it was all very exciting, I have to say.
Yeah, and I was the assistant director at Friendly House. And the idea of doing something so near and dear to my heart was very exciting, but also that something that we knew at the time was cutting edge for Friendly House. And we really wanted to do something that was cutting edge, that we had expertise in. Plus, it was going to be a great way for Eileen and I to spend more time together.
I want to get to that part. Do you remember kind of what the genesis was, how it came to be, how Friendly House got included?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, so first of all, one of our case managers, probably 5 years before this, called a meeting of people who were working with seniors in Multnomah County and surrounds. And there was an incredible, I just remember seeing people, like tens and tens and tens of people coming in the door. She called a meeting because she was concerned about LGBT older adults, and you know, she was going to be in that same group, and it, you know, in a few years coming. And she said, let's just get together and talk about what seniors who are LGBT need, or gonna need. So that happened first. And then my recollection after that is maybe because of that meeting, Paul Urabino, who worked for Multnomah County at the time, contacted Friendly House and said, you know, let's try to get this group together again and see what we can actually do. And so that's my recollection of how things got going.
Yeah. And I think Paul introduced us to the Rainbow Train in
Also.
Seattle, from Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think we contacted them, and then things got rolling.
Yeah. I think we knew prior to that we wanted to provide socialization and also support for older LGBT people so that they can continue to live in their own homes. And then once we established that, we said, hey, what do we do now? We need some training.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did the Rainbow Train was out of Seattle? I mean, that was where that specific training came from. Did that have an elder model, or the elder panel model, or was that something that we added later?
Well, now I can't remember.
Well, I think what happened was that we got the training, and it was to train providers and how to work with LGBT older adults. What are the special needs and considerations? I think that the panel grew out of that.
Just what I remember through the years, the elder panel piece was sort of what was so significant about the training that we were doing, that nobody was doing anything like it. And for people who haven't seen it or are not familiar with it, it was, we would have a facilitator who sort of provided overall context, and then anywhere from 2 to 4 older adults with lived experience are talking about, what it means to be LGBT and older adults. And I remember so much feedback about, particularly from students and young professionals who are going into a specific field, because the folks on the elder panel really tried to shape their stories to be relevant to the people who were hearing the content. So, for housing providers talking about issues of housing, and it had an impact on people. I mean, I remember hearts and minds changing, leaving those trainings. And I just don't think there was anything like that at the time.
No,
Well, so
it was cutting edge.
it was, and you knew it at the time. You knew that. I mean, that was the question I was thinking about this morning.
Yeah, we knew it was because everybody, some straight people started seeing it, and the panel, and just look, the impact that they felt. And that's, of course, what we were looking for. LGBT people knew what was needed, but then it really pulled in people who were straight and needed the education. They just hadn't ever considered what the impact would be. But I also want to still talk about the Rainbow Train, because they laid out a terrific way to present to folks. I mean, they started out, I believe, with just introducing the concept and then terminology. And that's huge for, providers to understand what is the correct terminology to use when addressing an LGBT person or couple. And then some history. And one of the big parts of the training was keeping the secret, which Eileen used that piece of the training.
It was powerful because no matter who you are, everybody has at least a secret that they don't want anybody to know. And so giving those presentations, I could see people's wheels turning, and kind of making this connection between being an LGBT older adult and having to keep these secrets and having to have kept that secret all their lives, and that was very powerful, I think.
Working together on this project as, colleagues, did that help to lay the groundwork for what came later?
Yeah. I just want to say that the biggest thing was when I came to work at Friendly House, and then I was the program director, put me in a position that through meetings or whatever committees, Vaughn and I spent a lot of time together, and that's really how we got to know each other. So
before the fishing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
And just by the way, it'll be 23 years at the end of this month.
Oh my gosh.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing. Oh my.
We've grown old together.
Yeah.
Um,
Time flies. How long was it before Kevin got hired? Kevin was the first staff person for Elder Resource Alliance. Do you remember? Because he was there when I came in 2004.
Yeah.
But
well, let me give a little bit of a backstory to this. So first of all, some of us knew that this was the right program for Friendly House, but not everybody. I mean, this is, the late 1990s, early 2000s when officially Friendly House adopted the program, because up until then it was just a coalition of organizations. So, but we knew that there was a possibility of attracting funding and really getting established as a program. And so that was going to take the Friendly House board agreeing that ERA would be an official Friendly House program. and as I said, controversial. We worked through those things. I mean, both internally with staff and also with board, and concern about donors and how would they feel about this program. And we had to work through a lot of things, and it was legitimate. You know, I mean, you have to deal with these issues head on. So finally, the board did agree that this could be a growth edge for Friendly House. And I have to credit Peter Friedman, who was the executive director at the time, for being behind this. So that happened. And then we were able to, I remember Adam Menendez, who was the development director of Friendly House, he wrote some grant applications. We got a little bit of funding, and I think that enabled us to do activities. And in the beginning, it was really about activities and doing the trainings. There was no care coordination aspect of it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was how we were able to hire him and get the program started.
You were talking earlier, Vaughn, about you know, straight people getting it and the opportunity. And I still remember my interview, and the only part I really remember about it was coming in and you were telling me, we have this new program called Elder Resource Alliance, and it's you know, it's very specifically focused on the needs of LGBT older adults. And until that moment, I'd never given it a second thought, you know, and I think it was just sort of before the It Gets Better campaign, but really the focus in LGBT community was really on young people and youth, and has been for a long time. But I think programs like Elder Resource Alliance and, you know, Q Center and all that have helped to shift that. I remember, you know, people who back then received their newsletter in wrapped in a very obscure brown paper because they didn't feel able to receive something in the mail that was referencing LGBT people. And I don't know if this was true or not, but that Elder Resource Alliance, the name Elder Resource Alliance, was very deliberately kind of benign in that way, so that people could say, I'm going to Friendly House, and there was no questions about that or eyebrows raised. Was that a deliberate decision?
Yes, it was. Definitely was. And yeah, I think some of the older folks who were part of the input process wanted the name to be more out there. But yeah, that it was a conservative choice, and we knew it, and we felt it was necessary at the time.
And then I remember when we changed our name to Gay and Gray, it was sort of a coming out party. But it was even over that the time I was involved, from 2004 to 2012, the shift in thinking, you know, was dramatic. It was pretty extraordinary.
Yeah, and you know, going back to what you were saying about kind of the beginning and resources, you know, the idea of serving LGBT older adults, I think, you know, because many people think of LGBT as a sexuality, you know, that's a strike. And also, if you're talking about old people and sex, oh my God, you know, we don't need to think about that. Which of course, the truth is, it's so much broader than sexuality. But yeah, so all those contributing factors. I mean, you know, 20 years ago, we weren't where we are today. I mean, the progress has been rapid over the last 15 years, 10 years. So
yeah.
I remember you writing 2 versions of a press release in the days leading
I
up to
forgot
marriage
about that.
equality. And I have both of them. They were, one of them was if this doesn't pass, and the other was if it did. And I think we were at the time planning the expo. And I remember everybody on pins and needles waiting to find out how this was going to go down. And then the celebration at the expo meeting and sort of recognition that some tides are turning in some ways was
Yeah.
pretty incredible.
And it was extra amazing because there were many times before that when we were so disappointed by the voters of Oregon or by the state legislature. So it was huge.
Another sort of pivotal time for what was then Gay and Gray was getting the contract, the ADVSD, Aging Disability Veterans Services contract. And that I remember Lee Gerard being a real pioneer for securing funding for minority communities. And
it was amazing. Mary Shortall, remember she was involved in some of the first meetings.
Yes.
Yeah, the support of the county was mind-blowing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
all the
it's
way
great.
along. It's true.
Yeah, and yes, I think county staff were supportive all the way along. And then when it came to Lee Gerard, I think that there had been enough advancement and momentum that had grown where she was like, we are getting some of this funding to Friendly House so that you can provide more activities.
Any favorite stories or memories?
Oh, well, yeah.
What?
I just think about the elder panel and how important it was not only for the audience to hear their stories, but for them to tell their stories. And, for some of the older folks, by the time they were in their 70s or 80s, they, it's like, edit myself? Why would I do that? I'm just going to tell my story.
Anything else you guys can think of that you want to include? This is fantastic. Thank you so much for taking time.
Yeah, I mean, I've mentioned Paul Urbino. I think he deserves so much credit because he was like a dog with a bone and he would not let it go. And he was a terrific organizer and really motivated the group to get the job done. And when the rest of the group fell short, he did it. So, yeah,
Yeah, he did a lot of, we did this train the trainer program, and meaning that we got trained as staff, and then we would train providers or whoever. And Paul Urbino and Joe Williams did one of their skits.
Oh yeah,
was about, and so they did this skit where Paul's like, in his wheelchair, I think, and Jill is the in-home care provider who comes, and there's a picture of, 2 men, and the care provider says on the first round, the care provider says, is this your brother? And there's several questions like that, making assumptions on her part about the situation. And then they do it again, and it's more like open-ended questions, like, oh, who's this? Not assuming that that's his brother, that could be his lover, and I can't remember some of the other questions right now, but that was, well, and just it being Paul, he was just so good at it too. And
funny.
People loved it, it was great. And it was kind of eye-opening, thinking about just the use of language and just how you just change a few words and it makes a whole lot of difference,
And how often we just make assumptions, not with bad intention most of the time, but just
exactly
over the course of a day. Yeah.
Okay, hi everybody. I'm April.
I'm Carol.
And that's Marilyn Monroe in the background. She's helping us tonight. We've been asked to tell some stories about our early involvement with the SAGE program. And it really started when I was the countywide diversity manager for Multnomah County, and in partnership with Aging and Disability Services, Paul Arabino and Jill, and a woman from Volunteers of America, and also Friendly House. So Eileen and Vaughn, we started meeting, talking about issues having to do with the things we were hearing about LGBTQI elders not being welcome, not being wanted, or treated poorly in care facilities, or gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, etc. Family members not being welcome to visit their family members. And so we started exploring the need for training for people who are providing care. And we were meeting for a while, and all I know is that we decided we were going to hire this organization from Seattle called Rainbow Train, which is now defunct because I tried to look them up to see if they're still around. And they came down, and we had a weekend train the trainer, and it was the people involved that I talked about. We didn't have enough people, so I invited Carol, my wife, but then right then was just my girlfriend. And
I didn't have anything else to do over the weekend.
She had a free weekend, so she came and did the train the trainer. And then the expectation was that we would participate in training nurses, MSW students, care facility members, staff, etc. And so we embarked on that journey. And Carol kind of took over as the lead facilitator, so I'll let her talk a little bit about the curriculum.
Okay, so yeah, I did come for that weekend. It sounded like fun, and I was at that time I was head of the counseling department at Heritage High School in Vancouver. And
okay, we're going the way back machine.
Well, here we go. And so one of the things that had happened is that we had a couple of students come to us at the counseling department and ask if we could have a support group for GLBT students, or students who had GLBT family members, or maybe they were allies of other kids or whatever it was. And so we had formed that group. So that was one thing that sort of provided me with a little bit of a foundation. And the other thing that I'd been doing was that I had been going out into the elementary schools and talking to teachers and students about issues having to do with drug and alcohol use, and especially in families. So, and I took a panel of students with me. And that's important because it was out of that experience that we decided to have a panel of elders. Mm-hmm. So once we got the training going and sort of got some speed going with Rainbow Train, do you want to talk about how we did the training, April?
Well, there were several components, but one of the ones I remember was an activity called Keeping a Secret. And we had people think about a time when they kept a secret that was really important to them. And then we talked about the effects of that and what was it like to have to keep a part of yourself hidden and or secret. And it seemed to have a lot of impact with people, especially straight people who had never thought about what it might be like to be LGBTQI.
In the closet.
And in the closet. And then our panel members, Mary Beth was one of the panel members. I remember we had several others. We had some trans folks that were on the panel, and their stories really impacted people. You could see the emotional impact. We changed hearts with the stories of our panel. So it was fabulous. But so I'll talk more about the skits. We did skits, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But we were asked to talk about some of the challenges. So do you want to start with that, Carol?
Well, I would say that one of the challenges certainly was navigating homophobia, people in the audience, and navigating the homophobia that sometimes caregivers brought into the room with them, and that was one of the problems that caused all of this to get started in the first place. Misconceptions about gay people, and making things up, like we all make things up about other people. But and then we had to get the panelists, many of whom had not done any public speaking, getting them ready, presentation ready, and how do you comport yourself, or what are the things that is okay to say or maybe not to say.
We did have some examples of what not to say in sessions.
Yeah, so all of those things were some of our challenges, and all of which we managed to to handle well. One of the presentations we did at Providence Elder Place was a group of very senior residents there who came to see our presentation because they didn't have anything else to do. And some of them were a little bit, they looked at us a little with a kind of a wary eye because we were talking about, the gay stuff. But they stayed until the end anyway. So
Yeah.
I don't know if it was because they were bored or they were really interested.
Or thought it was magic. I don't know.
Yeah.
Another thing we did was we sponsored viewings of a national film called Gen Silent,
Yeah.
and that was really, really powerful as
Very.
well. The stories of those men and women. And then I think what kept it going was we started out with Elder Resource Alliance. That took a long time to find that name. Then they went to Gay and Gray, and I think we had Gay and Gray symposiums. There were some like mini conferences that we put on. And then we basically did the train the trainer for anybody that was going to facilitate and or be a panel member. So just a great effort on the part of people who are very passionate and committed to trying to make a difference. And it really worked well.
Can I throw one thing in there?
One thing.
Okay. Oh, well, because I retired from the schools in 2004, it really gave me the opportunity to dive headlong into the training, and so we trained nurses at Linfield. We trained a lot of folks in nursing homes, especially in care facilities out in
through the county,
East
people
County.
that were getting licensure through
Right.
for
So it
foster
was
care
really
and that
great.
kind of thing.
It was a great service that Friendly House was able to offer, and I was glad that I had the time to be involved in it in the way that I was.
And Carol and Paul went to a national conference.
We did in
where
Chicago.
Paul called Carol his work wife, and then at his retirement party, we found out that he was a bigamist. He had
Yeah,
about
other
5
work
wives. Okay, so
Okay.
lastly, we want to talk about the skits that Jill and Paul used to do, and they had examples of bad care provider and good care provider, and the good care provider, her name was April. And so when they did the good care provider at the very end, she came over and she wrapped Paul up in I'll just wrap you.
Okay.
She wrapped Paul up in a rainbow flag, and that was
yes.
the best thing that she could do for him, and he was ever so happy. We are honored to have been a small part of this effort, and continue to applaud the efforts of everybody involved, and keep up the good work, because now Carol and I are seniors. We need it more than ever. Thank you.
Greetings. My name is Charles Darnell. And first off, let me say, happy 20th anniversary, Sage. I'd also like to share with you how I became involved with Sage and why I participate in Sage. I had been a member of Metropolitan Community Church for many years, and I have become a member of the church care team, in which we attempt to assist members in daily life activity. And one young man came to us and said he wanted to attend Meals on Wheels, which was held in the basement of the church. It was a group Meals on Wheels setting. But we had concerns in that he may become disoriented in traveling or taking TriMet or the lift by himself, and wondered if we could assist. And of course, I volunteered to drive from my house to his house, pick him up, take him to Meals on Wheels, wait for him to participate, and then drive him back home, keeping him safe. That went on for a few months. And the young man said, I think I'd like to go to the social that Sage is putting on. The Christmas social, I think it was. Again, I picked him up, took him to the event. There were probably 150 plus people attending. There were activities of games, prizes, socializing, people that probably hadn't seen each other for many months. And it was a wonderful sight to see them enjoying themselves, largely seniors. I very much appreciated what I saw. I appreciated what I saw in taking the young man to Meals on Wheels. because they played games there and socialized and showed that they cared for one another. They played bingo. There were prizes awarded for the winners. They also checked on one another at Meals on Wheels. At Meals on Wheels, they also celebrated birthdays throughout, whoever had birthdays throughout the week. They sang happy birthday to, and often had a cake to share for those birthdays. After a few months of taking the young man to Meals on Wheels, I was approached by a representative from SAGE and asked if I would be willing to serve on the advisory board. I quickly said yes, and I hope in my activities involved with SAGE, I am paying it forward. You see, the young man that I gave the ride to is now 87 years old, and I'm not that far behind. One day, that person needing the ride, needing assistance, is probably going to be me. So I hope I am paying it forward. SAGE has done a wonderful job, not just in social activities for the seniors, but they also provide counseling, advisory, and services wherever possible for our senior LGBT adults. SAGE, again, happy 20th anniversary, and I am so glad that I am a part of SAGE. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Lauren Fontanarosa, and I was the SAGE program coordinator from about 2011 to 2015. I first became involved with SAGE about a year earlier by going to our local QDoc Film Festival and seeing the documentary Gen Silent. At the time, I was probably about 30 and really honestly just hadn't given a lot of thought to growing older, to getting to be my 60s, 70s, 80s. I wasn't thinking about what I might face during those years, and I definitely wasn't thinking about what current LGBTQ older adults were facing. So the documentary was fantastic. It really opened my eyes to a lot and really just made me want to get involved. I think us at the time, us younger LGBTQ folks gave a lot of credit to our elders for paving the path, but I think the piece that was missing was thinking about, well, how could we currently support our elders? So Friendly House was there with a table and had opportunities to get involved as volunteers. So I signed up to be a volunteer and volunteered for about a year before I moved into the position of program coordinator. When I think back to my time with SAGE, I just feel so grateful that I had the opportunity. It definitely was the most rewarding job I've ever had, probably ever will have. It was a really great time. I remember so much the community members just being so open and welcoming to me, to really helping me as I learned the ropes, and just dedicating so much of their time and effort to the program and making the program really what it is, because the program wouldn't be nearly the same without the involvement of so many community members. And I think back to how fortunate I was for those years to have so many intergenerational relationships and friendships, and work so closely almost on a daily basis with some of these folks. I think a lot of times in our regular life, we get a little bit siloed into our age group and who our friends are. And I definitely was like that. And so to have so much connection from people of many different generations at that time was so rewarding, and just still stays with me today. When I think about SAGE in the future, my wishes sound maybe a little simplistic, but they're not at all. And it's to keep up the good work. And I don't think that that's easy, and I don't think that it comes without a lot of effort. I think SAGE is so great at bringing awareness and education and advocacy to older adult services, to assisted living facilities. And I think about all the great work that's been done to educate those service providers, and to bring a lot of awareness to that group of people. But I think too about how much awareness and education and advocacy has also gone to the LGBT community and thinking about, again, like raising the issue that our elders are here. These are the fears and anxieties that they're facing. We all, as we grow older, might also face these same challenges. So let's really band together to support these generations. And I think that there isn't anybody else doing that with the LGBTQ community. There's no one else raising those issues and bringing that awareness. So I think it's a lot of work to be done, but I think Sage does it well, and I think they'll continue to do it well in the future. And I wish everybody nothing but the best. And I'm so grateful to be part of this celebration and really spending some time to reflect on the great work that has happened through many program coordinators, many staff at Friendly House, but most importantly, so many volunteers from the community themselves. You know, they might be retired, they might be looking to do other things, but they're coming back and really dedicating a lot of hours each week or month to this program and to making sure that their peers are finding community and that their peers are not facing discrimination when they go into traditional senior settings, and that they're, again, raising these aging issues in the LGBT community at large.
When I first got involved in SAGE was back when it was called Elder Resource Alliance, and it was after I had moved to Portland, Oregon from Oakland, California, and I was looking for volunteer opportunities for older adults. When I saw that there was an organization serving LGBT older adults and they had a summer barbecue coming up, well, I just jumped in and brought some goodies and met some people for the first time. And that was in 2006. I acted as a volunteer in the capacity of co-chairing and chairing the Gay and Gray Expo from the years around 2008 till about 2011. And in part of that process, I was working with the staff at Friendly House to consider becoming a SAGE affiliate and finding out if it would be a good fit for Friendly House and SAGE National.
And why did you get involved with the organization?
I got involved because there is so little representation of older adults, period. I realized that this is a niche that needs advocates. It needs younger people there to support, lift up, and give the voice back to older adults to be heard.
Are there any past events, more recent events, let's say, that you've really enjoyed being a part of with SAGE?
Well, I mean, Pride 2019, you were there, Rebecca. We were the Grand Marshals. For 2019, we were, third in line in the parade. We were highly acknowledged by the LGBT community within Portland and beyond. So for me, I reflect back on that year, and as tiring and exhausting as it was, it felt so fulfilling to see older adults who'd come this far in life to be celebrated. And when I mean celebrated, you were there. We were surrounded by the crowds. And so very memorable time for me.
What do you see for the future of SAGE?
I would love to see LGBT older adults feel and have the support that they need to continue their quality of life and be more involved in community as well. And what I mean by that is to have a specific safe space for LGBT older adults to gather and organize. And so as well, I would really like to see that happen. And it is going to happen with housing for LGBT older adults. And I think after our recent survey release here in Oregon and some of the feedback that we've gotten through studies from AARP, that older adults are speaking out about having a place for themselves to gather, be themselves, not have to worry if people are comfortable with who they are because of their sexual orientation or gender identity. So I do think that that is kind of the future for SAGE here in Portland. I'd say that I'm really proud of the coalition work to put together a survey and do the outreach to collect what we've needed all along, which is the voice of LGBT older adults. I'm very proud of LGBT community members being able to work together in a team setting and to lift one another up. We have older adults who are often extremely underrepresented. And so I feel that we are finally becoming noticed and visible, and that part of the outcome of that work will be hopefully more services for this community. And why did you get involved with SAGE?
Once I realized that SAGE existed, it was hard not to. It was just sounded so interesting to me, and I answered a question in my interview with one of our participants. I asked her why she got involved, and she told me about the housing issues that a friend of hers had and that they had to go back into the closet. And she was almost crying, and I was almost crying, and I didn't even care at that point if I got the job. I just wanted to help. And so as soon as I found out that I could be involved, I wanted to be.
And do you have a memory of your involvement since you've been with SAGE?
I almost forgot about the Valentine's Day party that we did at Hollywood Senior Center. It was so great to see those photos again. I know it was technically 2021, but I think a lot of us are rewriting that year off, in our minds, just kind of saying, oh, nothing happened, but it did, and it was really great to see all the faces. It was just wonderful.
It was. Yeah, that was pretty much our last physical event before the world shut down. And you have been such an intricate part of SAGE's success recently, but since you stepped into the position, what do you see for the future of SAGE?
The housing piece is definitely something that I feel like we are getting so close. We're getting so close to having something that I think people have really wanted for a long time. Another thing I really want to see is I want to see us more outreach into the community. I feel like that there's so many people who don't know about what we do and who we are and the types of services that we provide. It's hard to find support systems for when you break your leg at any age, get really sick. It's hard to find support for yourself in those situations and to be a good advocate. I think that the case management services that we provide are crucial to having somebody be there and really walk you through how to get older and how to take on these challenges. I think that that's something that more and more people need as we all get older, and it's something that I'd like to see us do more outreach.
I'm just so grateful that we're able to begin this process of collecting stories. I have met many people who've done a lot of work for SAGE and Elder Resource Alliance and Gay and Gray. And then there's a lot of people that I'm learning about. So this is really fulfilling my heart, as well as knowing that this has been a wanted task to fulfill for this community for a long time.